people gave their voice, but there is also a voice from the 18 other people, 18 other member states, and we need absolutely to today to have a frank, a clear, a good discussion in order to avoid the worst, which would be the Brexit. Brexit would be a failure. It would be a terrible mistake.
It was first used by Virgil in his writing of the war between Greece and the city of Troy. Do not trust the horse, Trojans. Whatever it is, I fear the Greeks, even when they bring gifts, which in the modern era has long been boiled down to never trust a Greek bearing gifts. The Eurozone gave Greece a gift in asking them to come to the table with a plan to solve their financial disaster. And on Tuesday in Brussels, the Greeks showed up empty-handed, which could force us to rethink the adage and simply state, never trust a Greek government that has plunged its nation into the financial abyss. The repercussions and sidelights as we welcome back the veteran economist, professor of business at the University of Maryland, and national columnist Peter Morici. Peter, was there any shock whatsoever that Greece basically came, held out their hands and said, sorry, got nothing?
Well, they really don't have a plan. Austerity, the German plan, hasn't worked. We know that. But what Greece needs is substantial debt relief and actually a somewhat bigger public sector in the short term to jumpstart the economy, even as it reforms and makes it more efficient. That's beyond the thinking of the Greek government, especially since they fired their finance minister to appease Angela Merkel. He was the only one with economics background in the place.
Peter, the one thing about this that has always struck me is this didn't happen overnight, no matter how much we want to talk about it. Angela Merkel and the entire crew, it didn't just happen and they said, wow, shocked everybody. So they've seen this coming for a long time. Why was nothing done, or could anything have been done to stop us from getting to this precipice?
Well, Germany is operating under a false premise. It operates under the notion that it can have an export-driven economic policy, run larger and larger trade surpluses, the same thing with Austria and Holland, and that the rest of the European community somehow or other will survive. Well, the answer is if they have these big surpluses, then Greece and the others have to have deficits and borrow. And sooner or later, your customers run out of borrowing space and collapse. And that is exactly what has happened. To say this belongs all to the Greek public sector is really unfair. The Germans have been exploiting the Eurozone to their own liking and basically living very well. For example, they like to brag how efficient they are. Who else do you know only works 32 and a half hours a week? And they like to brag that they have reformed their labor laws so people can be laid off. During the financial crisis, the German government was paying employers to keep people on the payroll. It seems as though the bracing winds of competition and adjustment are only good for the Greeks. They're not good for the Germans. And responsible behavior is only good for the Germans, but not the Greeks. In reality, a lot of people have been irresponsible here.
So then if we look at some recent history then, how did the Germans get away with it? Because what you just said, pretty much everybody could see over and over again, so somebody basically had to say, go ahead, Angela, do what you want. We're just going to sit back and watch.
Well, this goes back before Angela. Also, have you ever tried to discuss economics with Christine Lagarde or Barack Obama?
No. That's too dangerous. We don't have enough time.
Well, remember, Angela Merkel's a physicist, and they look at the world and they reach some generalizations. It's kind of like an Associated Press reporter trying to understand the machinations of the derivatives market. It doesn't work. The reality is, in Europe, economic policy is a junior achievement project. It's based on whims, aspirations, wishes, and so forth. It's whimsy. The notion that a common currency is possible in a place as diverse as Europe is absolute folly. Milton Friedman said it in the beginning, as I did, and now it's come to pass. They didn't listen to the economists, and they've got a terrible mess on their hands.
And at this point, you mentioned this in an article as well. In your opinion, Athens has just got to issue the drachma banknotes, remark the bank deposits, exit loans, get to the new currency. That would be the way out at this point, correct?
Absolutely, and now the Germans are perpetuating the myth that that would be a disaster, that it can't even be done. Yesterday I was on CNBC, and they were saying, well, there's no basis, there's no architecture for doing it. Heck, where did Georgia and the Ukraine get their currencies? The answer is when the old Soviet Union broke up, they created currencies. It happens all the time. This can be done, it has been done in the past, and it will be done again in the future. The question is, do the Greeks do it now?
I only got about 30, 40 seconds left. In your opinion, anything to worry about with the rout in Chinese stocks that are going on right now?
Well, I think the Chinese have got a lot to worry about because the whole stock market there is built on a house of cards. In America, you can't buy on margin anymore the way they do in China, and you certainly can't go down to the bank and borrow the money to do it. The Chinese banks are in a lot of trouble. Though I think we're fairly well insulated from it. But guess what? One of the latest moves is the government is letting the Chinese investors borrow against their homes to prop up the market.
Gee, what could possibly go wrong, right, Peter?
Hey, here we go. Another financial crisis, chow mein style.
It's just perfect. For whatever reason, I love getting to this point because they never learn the lessons that we keep pointing out to them over and over again.
Well, don't you know the Chinese have superior intellect? We're just merely inferior Westerners.
I'd forgotten that. Let me write that down. I'll get back to you when I write that down. I'll write that down in Mandarin, if you will.
Yes.
Peter Morici, always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks so much for joining us. Coming up next, the president's hollow speech about fighting ISIS and liberating Syria. Let's get to some facts when the Hardline continues.